So when it comes to Canadian-made clothing, what options are out there for us?
There are two sort of general categories for options in terms of buying Canadian apparel. The first is the bigger one, which is any brand or apparel company that's based in Canada but doesn't have their manufacturing or isn't sourcing directly from Canada. This is like, think Lululemon or Aritzia.
Okay.
These are Canadian-owned apparel companies. The second option, which is more difficult to find as a consumer and much more difficult to achieve as a business owner, is any brand that's trying to move some of their supply chain into Canada, thinking like, can they bring the sewing into Canada? Or are there materials here that they could source directly from? This is difficult, especially the bigger kinds of brands out there, because most of this industry, most of the supply chain has been outsourced.
And so let's talk about price point. Is it more expensive to buy Canadian right now? And if so, why?
It's always going to be more expensive to buy Canadian. In apparel, if just take the cost of manufacturing alone, there's a reason why this entire industry exists and has been outsourced, out of the global north, and it's because the industry has been looking for decades for cheapest labor.
Yeah.
And so if you wanted to make clothes, if you were willing to, and many Canadian small brands are willing to actually pay workers in Canada living wages to sew garments, to produce apparel, that price point is going to be much, much more expensive.
What are some suggestions for people who might want to support Canadian apparel, but they don't know how, or maybe finances are tight right now?
Yeah, I think if you want to be supporting Canadian apparel, the best thing to do is start investing in the companies and the brands who are, doing that work to really supply ethical, sustainable living wages for their workers. They're caring about, what kinds of materials they're using and are making strategies for the long-term consequences of the materials they use and the products they make. And also, I think in a moment where everyone is being told to buy, it's also worth reminding yourself that, consumption is a individual choice. It's a strategy, and it's not necessarily, the only way to be living out your politics. And so if, it's not actually going to make a huge difference whether or not you change all of your buying to
Purchasing.
Yeah, you don't need. I guess you don't need to do that in order to be a supporter of Canadian apparel.
Yeah.
You could buy less and invest less frequently in a couple pieces a year, and that could also have the same impact.